Good morning to you all. This is a special recording for the CME India, how to choose diuretic for BP lowering. Same presentation was given at the 16th Asian Pacific Congress of Hypertension that happened from 24th to 28th of November 2021 at New Delhi. My none of disclosure is here. What we are going to deal today is, I will introduce the subject. BP reduction is the key, the main message from the very beginning. So diuretics in practice, there are few diuretics we are using day to day, and choose which diuretics and when, that is the topic. And according to the guidelines, and when diuretics become essential, and then I will conclude. It is well known that all monogenic forms of hypertension have sodium retention as the main mechanism of the increase in blood pressure. So increasing urinary sodium excretion is a logical and fundamental part of treatment of hypertension. Consistent with this understanding, thiazide diuretics are listed in hypertension guidelines as one of the three equally weighted first-line antihypertensives. You are well aware that the options are the ACE inhibitors, ARBs, calcium channel blockers, and now at third position, the thiazide type of diuretics. So how to differentiate between these three options? If you see here, the diuretics which today we have in market or available is basically three, that is the hydrochlorothiazide, chlorthalidone, and indapamide SR. One thing is quite obvious here, that if you see the serum lipids, neutral is only indapamide. If you see the serum glucose, it is increased with both, but it is neutral here. And even if you see the renal function, it decreased with chlorthalidone and hydrochlorothiazide, but it is neutral with the indapamide. As far as the serum potassium is concerned, you can see it is decreased with all of three. So multiple meta-analysis, for instance, have documented concerns that treatment with diuretics could lead to disruptions in electrolyte levels, to unfavorable metabolic effects, and to an increased risk of developing type 2 diabetes. These data, though important, have generated a perhaps disproportionate fear of the side effects that can be associated with diuretic treatment. So what is the major determinants of reduction in cardiovascular risk in both younger and older patients with hypertension? You see here that choice of antihypertensive monotherapy does not predict outcome. Rather, you use chlorthalidone, amlodipine, lisinopril, although it is an old study, very important study, LHAT study, which came in 2002. So this is one message here, but still you see the different meta-analysis. The 20117 American College of Cardiology or AHA statement on treatment of blood pressure, or most important now, the 2020 ISH, that is the International Society of Hypertension Practice Guidelines, and 2018 European Society Hypertension or European Society of Cardiology Guidelines on the management of hypertension, at least at one point, all concluded that the amount of blood pressure reduction is the main determinant of reduction in cardiovascular risk in both younger and older patients with hypertension, not the choice of antihypertensive drug. Assuming that the patient does not have an indication for a particular drug, such as diltiazem, verapamil, or a beta blocker for rate limiting control, that is the atrial fibrillation. So let us first analyze the different diuretics which we are concerned in our day-to-day clinical practice. It is quite evident from this cartoon that all effects on electrolyte take place on the luminal side of the epithelial cell, but only spironolactone leads to reduction in sodium potassium exchange on the interstitial side as well. So this is important. But if you see the half-life and how much time the action persists, you see here that we have thiazide diuretics like chlorothiazide or hydrochlorothiazide mainly, and thiazide-like diuretics, that is chlorthalidone, indapamide, metazolone, and then we have the loop diuretics like furosemide or torsemide now. Apart from that, also the potassium-sparing diuretics, amiloride, trimethrin, or elastron antagonist potassium-sparing, that is eplerenone and spironolactone. So, but what I want to highlight here, that if you are using chlorthalidone, that is the duration of action is 24 to 72 hours. So this appears here from this chart that this is the longest one. Thiazide diuretics inhibit the reabsorption of luminal side in the early distal convoluted tubule, initially promoting natriuresis and diuresis. However, after a few days, there is a re-equilibration of sodium homeostasis by the kidney, and blood pressure lowering persists through vasodilatation in the absence of volume depletion. So thiazide diuretics can be differentiated into thiazide type, that is hydrochlorothiazide, and thiazide-like, that is chlorthalidone and indapamide, based on molecular structure, mechanism of action, and efficacy. They present a flat dose response curve with a greater risk of adverse metabolic effects without significant improvement in blood pressure at dosage exceeding 2.5 to 25 milligrams, depending on the diuretics. Efficacy in preventing cardiovascular events is the most important point these days. And there are no randomized trials that directly compare cardiovascular outcomes in hypertensive patients treated with hydrochlorothiazide or other thiazide type diuretics such as chlorothiazide with chlorthalidone or other thiazide like diuretics such as indapamide. And also we don't have a head-to-head trials. So in the absence of head-to-head trials, a multiple treatment network meta-analysis of 21 trials that has showed that after controlling for achieved blood pressure, thiazide-like but not thiazide-type diuretics reduced the risk of cardiovascular events compared with the placebo. And compared with thiazide-type diuretic, thiazide-like diuretics significantly lowered the relative risk of cardiovascular events by 12% and heart failure by 21%. So if you see this from the LHAT again about the cardiovascular mortality and all-cause mortality, you can see you had favors diuretics and what not. In the same way, if you see the stroke and heart failure with the meta-analysis that showed that diuretics perform as well as ACE inhibitors, calcium channel blockers, and angiotensin receptor blockers. But the inferiority of the hydrochlorothiazide to thiazide-like diuretics and to other antihypertensive classes of medications have been reviewed recently in literature. And what I want to impress here that the hydrochlorothiazide was less effective in preventing cardiovascular events compared to enalapril in the ANBP2 trial. And it was again less effective to amlopidine in the ACCOMPLISH trial and to the chlorthalidone and a combination of hydrochlorothiazide and amiloride in network analysis of trials. And this hydrochlorothiazide has been shown to be similar to chlorthalidone in producing gout and hypokalemia. So here it doesn't score over the chlorthalidone. In patients with hypertension and diabetes, hydrochlorothiazide is inferior to indapamide in improving endothelial function and longitudinal stress. And it is again inferior to spironolactone in improving the coronary flow reserve. But in spite of these observations, hydrochlorothiazide has remained most commonly prescribed drug. And it should not be forgotten that this, when you combine this hydrochlorothiazide with trimetrine and hydrochlorothiazide with amiloride, that has demonstrated to be effective in reducing cardiovascular events compared to placebo. So at conventional dosage, there is not a specific relationship between the serum half-life of a diuretic and its biological potential. And we also must remember that the antihypertensive effects of thiazide-related diuretics can be reduced by concomitant administration of non-steroidal anti-inflammatory agents, which block vasodilatory prostaglandin synthesis and therein negatively impact renal sodium handling. Few points about the chlorthalidone. You see here that the distribution of chlorthalidone into the red blood cells creates a reservoir leading to a 2 to 3 day duration of action. So you can see this is important again. And for reducing, this is more effective than hydrochlorothiazide in network analysis. In the ALHIDE trial, the chlorthalidone was more effective than lisinopril for reducing cardiovascular events and more effective than amlodipine in preventing congestive heart failure. While concerns have been raised regarding chlorthalidone's tolerability, what we are finding here that you see the ALHIDE trial, and when you compare the BP control after 5 years in these 3 important drug groups, you see that with chlorthalidone, it was 68%, with amlodipine 66%, and with lisinopril 61%, so not much difference. At the 12.5 to 25 milligram dosage of chlorthalidone, safety concerns stemming from hypokalemia and hyperglycemia appeared to be unwarranted. And hyponatremia is more common with chlorthalidone than hydrochlorothiazide, but not at equipotent dosage. And perhaps most importantly, the incidence of hyponatremia for both medications is very strongly age-related. Recently, in the New England Journal of Medicine on November 5, this 2021, I think this is a very important trial, although a small trial, that chlorthalidone for hypertension in advanced CKD. And this small trial showed that among patients with advanced chronic kidney disease and poorly controlled hypertension, chlorthalidone therapy improved blood pressure control at 12 weeks as compared with placebo. So what researchers told that we are fooled that thiazide diuretics do not work in patients with advanced CKD. But chlorthalidone is very good at lowering blood pressure on top of 3 or 4 other medications. It lowers systolic blood pressure by an average of about 10 millimeter of mercury, a very good result. And this trial is known as CLICK trial. And we are so far aware that the thiazide diuretics are not ineffective in patients with GFR, eGFR less than 30. But here, the big finding is that proteinuria was reduced. A 50% reduction. It is really important, as the proteinuria is a major risk factor for progressive CKD. So what we can say today that chlorthalidone is not an agent to prescribe and forget. It's a very potent drug, and you need to monitor patients for complications, especially patients already on a loop diuretic. And you must remember that this is a cheap drug, easily available drug, and both the incidence and prevalence of CKD stage 4 are high. The outcomes of this trial will have broad and immediate applicability. So this is a very important message. If you compare the chlorthalidone with the indapamide, they are similar in their renal mechanism of action, two thiazides, as they target the same segment of the kidney. Their overall structure and longer half-life and pleiotropic effects set them apart as separate types of molecules from thiazide diuretics. This point is very, very important. But remember that chlorthalidone is also not a very safe drug, I will say. As this study has shown from the JAMA 2020, that has found that chlorthalidone was not associated with significant cardiovascular benefits when compared with hydrochlorothiazide, while its use was associated with greater risk of renal and electrolyte abnormalities. So these findings do not support correct recommendations to prefer chlorthalidone by this study. And if you see the list of side effects and adverse effects, even the decreased libido or erectile dysfunction is quite important adverse effect with the chlorthalidone. This is a real world evidence. And so a study concludes that recommendations to prefer chlorthalidone to hydrochlorothiazide are not supported by real world evidence. And this is a new study. But if you see the features with indapamide, really it is worth to ask you that is it the best thiazide or thiazide-like diuretic? As with chlorthalidone, the thiazide-like diuretic indapamide acts on the distal convoluted tubule, In addition to its diuretic effects, it acts to lower systolic blood pressure via a calcium antagonist effect. And the PATS trial demonstrated that in stroke patients, 2.5 milligram of indapamide was superior to placebo and reducing the cardiovascular events by 23%. In 3 settings, remember, the value of adding indapamide to perindopril for preventing cardiovascular disease has been demonstrated. That is number 1, stroke, 2, elderly, and 3rd, among diabetes. And relative to hydrochlorothiazide, it was superior in improving the microalbuminuria in diuretics, reducing left ventricular mass index, inhibiting platelet aggregation, and reducing oxidative stress. And its ability to reduce left ventricular hypertrophy is superior to enalapril. Unlike other thiazides and chlorthalidone, indapamide appears to have no impact on glucose or lipid metabolism. So this is a very, very important point. So here I will just give you a summary or take-home message for these 3 diuretics. The hydrochlorothiazide has a short duration of action, 6 to 12 hours, if you compare with the chlorthalidone or indapamide that ranges from 48 to 72 hours. Indapamide is 10 times as potent as the other 2 with about a 24-hour half-life. Chlorthalidone 25 mg per day is more effective in lowering systolic blood pressure than hydrochlorothiazide 50 mg per day. Chlorthalidone leads to a significantly fewer cardiovascular events than hydrochlorothiazide. Chlorthalidone and indapamide showed a significant reduction in coronary heart disease, stroke, and cardiovascular events compared with the placebo. So in the setting of better blood pressure lowering efficacy and favorable cardiovascular outcomes with minimal impact on adverse effects, hydrochlorothiazide can be substituted by chlorthalidone or indapamide. This is what I think, and data points. A few points about the potassium sparing diuretics. They are more effective in maintaining serum and intracellular levels of potassium. Observational and randomized trial data have highlighted the potential of thiazide and thiazide-like diuretics, generally at higher dosage to cause ventricular ectopy and sudden death, and for the addition of potassium-sparing diuretics to avert it. So this is important again. So we have got spironolactone, we have got the eplerenone, amiloride, trimethoprim. They are all valuable, and the latter 2 drugs have been successfully combined also. This trimethoprim N-amiloride with the hydrochlorothiazide, and when they were combined with this hydrochlorothiazide, it has been shown to reduce effective in reducing the cardiovascular events. In resistant hypertension, both spironolactone and amiloride up to 10 milligram and with hydrochlorothiazide have demonstrated utility overall. In the same way, the spironolactone has two antihypertensive sites of action at the mineral corticoid receptor in the kidney around the junction of the DCT and collecting duct, where it inhibits sodium-potassium exchange, and on receptors in the arterioles, where it antagonizes aldosterone-induced vasoconstriction. So evidence for the latter mechanism is supported by a 6 to 8 millimeter of mercury reduction in diastolic and mean pressure, but not for systolic blood pressure from the spironolactone in patients with end-stage renal disease. So while the potency of spironolactone in resistant hypertension has often been cited as exceeding 20 millimeter of mercury systolic, its placebo-adjusted effect more likely approximate 9 millimeter mercury. Spironolactone has never undergone adequate testing for efficacy in reducing cardiovascular events in unselected hypertensive, but does reduce total mortality and sudden death in advanced heart failure. This has been so. And if you see or think about the hemodialysis patients, it has been recently shown that the systolic spironolactone at 25 milligram, while having no effect on BP, decreased the primary outcome of cardiovascular death and hospitalization for cardiovascular events by 60%. And non-blood pressure related benefits of spironolactone are further suggested by a recent data which shows that the spironolactone ability to reduce proteinuria by 61% in proteinuric kidney disease, to reduce albuminuria by 60% in type 1 diabetes, to normalize left ventricular hypertrophy in primary aldosteronism and low renin hypertension, and to prevent chlorothalidone-induced sympathetic activation and insulin resistance in hypertensive patients. Eplerenone is a drug which improves endothelial function in patients with hypertension. This has been shown. Equivalency dose is approximately 100 milligram of eplerenone to the 25 milligram of spironolactone. And what is the role of the loop diuretics? As chronic kidney disease transitions from stage 3 to 5, particularly with extracellular fluid volume of expansion, loop diuretic therapy becomes the preferred diuretic therapy for management of hypertension. Loop diuretics are less effective than thiazide type drugs in reducing blood pressure in the non-edematous patient, as has been shown in a recent Cochrane analysis reporting that the systolic blood pressure, diastolic blood pressure reduction of several loop diuretics in primary hypertension. So the antihypertensive effect of low-dose loop torsemide is improved with nighttime administration. This has been also shown with one trial. So how you are going to choose a diuretic? Well, choice may vary with the clinical setting. In most patients not previously treated with a thiazide diuretic, you can start with 12.5 to 25 milligram per day of chlorothalidone, or if you are going to choose indapamide, the dose is 1.25 to 5 milligram per day rather than hydrochlorothiazide. Among older patients who are less than 10 millimeter mercury above goal of blood pressure, low dose hydrochlorothiazide is a reasonable alternative. And among patients already treated with low dose hydrochlorothiazide, the optimal approach has not been defined. Some experts would switch all patients to chlorothalidone or indapamide at their next visit, with the possible exception of those who monitor their blood pressure at home and have values below goal at the end of the drug's dosing period. This is a good chart which shows you here that potential choices of add-on to ACE inhibitors or ARB treatment in first-line combination treatment for most hypertensive patients. So suppose you are already using ACE inhibitors or ARB treatment you are giving, so when to choose calcium channel blocker or when you should prefer a diuretic. So you just, I will tell here that the favors thiazide or thiazide-like diuretics if there is fluid overload, ankle edema, but not caused by CCBs, and if there is already calcium channel blocker intolerance, or if there is patient preference or high salt intake or unhealthy diet someone is taking, like high junk food, better you take advantage of the diuretics. And if type 2 diabetes with salt sensitivity, patient is overweight and with salt sensitivity, renal failure with sodium retention or hyperkalemia, symptomatic and suspected heart failure, I think these factors tell us that we should combine ACE or ARBs with the diuretics. So this is again an important point. And initial blood pressure lowering treatment with combination of two agents has been proposed, as you are well aware. And the decrease in intravascular volume by thiazide diuretics, this is a known fact that causes reflex activation of the sympathetic nervous system and renin-angiotensin aldosterone system that counteracts and limits the degree of blood pressure reduction. Adding ARBs provides a complementary blood pressure lowering effect. Now, lastly, we will discuss what guidelines tell. The latest hypertension guidelines have underscored the importance of diuretics for all patients, but particularly for those with salt sensitive and resistant hypertension. And if you see the old guidelines, essential hypertension, here you see that in most cases, here in the National Heart Foundation, they are telling about to choose thiazide. Even the European Society of Cardiology and European Society 2018, they want starting thiazide or thiazide-like diuretics equally recommended. Even this American College of Cardiology or American Heart Association 2017, thiazide was chlorthalidone, they preferred the chlorthalidone. So this is what was the scenario. Then when came the 2020, when the International Society of Hypertension changed its policy, which was directed at a worldwide audience. And surprisingly, this was based on outcomes of trials which were performed on the Nordic countries only. You can see here approximately 13,500 patients from the Nordic country, UK something around 9,000 patients, and USA approximately 8,000 patients. So if you ask me why ISH decided to move thiazide or thiazide-like diuretics such as hydrochlorothalidone or indapamide to a step 3 in the treatment scheme, this was based on a trial known as ACCOMPLISH trial, in which the ACE inhibitor benazepril in combination with CCB amlodipine prevented cardiovascular endpoints more effectively than the ACE inhibitor combination with the diuretic hydrochlorothiazide. So you can see here that in the ACCOMPLISH trial, they compare the ACE inhibitor benazepril combination with calcium channel blocker amlodipine with the hydrochlorothiazide and ACE inhibitor combination. And on the basis of this trial, they moved to step down this thiazide. And if you see from the SCOT trial also, the CCB plus ACE inhibitors if needed, which was more effective than the beta-energic blocker plus the indiuretic if needed in the SCOT trial. So I think the two trials was you can see the counterstone for the shifting of this hierarchy of the drugs. Sometimes it looks amazing to me that some guidelines do not group chlorthalidone and indapamide under the heading thiazide-like diuretic, but rather they treat the two molecules separately. If you see the Latin American Society of Hypertension guidelines, they prefer indapamide with a history of a stroke or transient attack. But in the most recent, I showed you the S or HA hypertensive recommendations, their choice is chlorthalidone. So data that provided the evidence base for the most important ISH recommendation, choice of first and second line treatment for hypertensive patients throughout the world, were derived from trials that enrolled mostly Caucasian patients, few blacks, almost no Hispanics, Asians or others. So this is rather surprising that whether in India we should follow it or not. So I think if you see the latest 2021 WHO guidelines, for adults, they say that for adults with hypertension requiring pharmacological treatment, they recommend use of drugs from any of the following three classes of pharmacological antihypertensive medication as the initial treatment. This is quite good that they say that any of the following thiazide or thiazide-like agents, ACE inhibitors or ARBs, or the CCBs, long-acting. So I think this is quite again important to see here, this guideline of WHO, which is quite good guideline, where they have given you the choice that you can choose either the thiazide, ACE inhibitors, ARBs or CCBs. If you see the 2019, which is the latest guideline from the India, that is known as Indian Guidelines on Hypertension, their choice is like this. If the patient is younger or older, if the step 1 you go for here, if it is younger, you go for the A, that is the ACE inhibitors or ARBs. If it is older, you go for CCB, calcium channel blocker or diuretics. And if you want to add a step 2, you add with again either with this A, C or D. And a step 3, A plus C plus D. And if there is resistant hypertension, that is a step 4, add MRA, spironolactone, and side effects, then use eplerenone. And a step 5, only add alpha blocker or beta blocker in a special situations. So this is what I think the Indian guidelines also saying in the same direction. We are well aware that hypertension in India has some special features. This is an important work by the Indian researchers, that onset is early in life, rural-urban divide in prevalence and clustering of multiple severe risk factors with significant seasonal variation, rising average BP of general population and low awareness, and early HMOD possibly due to poor control. So Indian guidelines tell you that the drugs that block the angiotensin pathway, ACE inhibitors and ARBs, are the preferred agents for treatment of hypertension in those under the age of 60 years. Calcium channel blockers and diuretics are the preferred agents in those over 60 years of age. And beta blockers are no longer considered as first-line agents. Some combinations are preferred, like ACE inhibitors or ARBs in combination with calcium channel blockers is considered as a first-line combination. So even from the Indian guidelines, you see that ACE inhibitors or ARB, then you can combine CCB. This is your first preference. And then they tell that diuretics may be used as a third agent in combination. So this is, I think, quite clear again in the same direction of the ISH. This work from the India itself, a double-blind RCT Indian study by Dr. Parikh, A.K. and et al., that the double-blind RCT in Indian patients, they compared this chlorthalidone 6.25 milligram with hydrochlorothiazide 12.5 milligram and did a 24-hour ABPM and found that hydrochlorothiazide merely converted sustained hypertension into MAST hypertension. And chlorthalidone significantly reduced the mean 24-hour ABP as well as nocturnal BP. So like white coat hypertension, MAST hypertension should also be recognized, and ambulatory blood pressure monitoring is useful to identify these patients and nocturnal hypertension. And in this regard, differences between chlorthalidone and hydrochlorothiazide are not noteworthy, especially in long half-life of the CTD. So this was the important message. So these authors recommended that the ACE inhibitors and calcium channel blockers is better than a diuretic-based combination based on accomplished trial. However, in Accomplish, a sponsored trial, a weaker thiazide-like diuretic, hydrochlorothiazide, was used in comparison and non-chlorthalidone. And chlorthalidone is structurally and pharmacokinetically distinct from this hydrochlorothiazide, which I'm already told that it is much longer duration of action, and against amlopidine, the chlorthalidone is the appropriate diuretic to be evaluated as done by major trials funded by National Institute of Health. Recent, if you see, the American and the Canadian hypertension guidelines also have clarified upon the differences between thiazide type and thiazide-like diuretic, with long-acting thiazide-like diuretics like CTD being preferred. So Indian guidelines too much clearly state, I think that this is quite a good statement, that the Indian guidelines too must clearly state this differences while recommending thiazide diuretics in management of hypertension. So concluding now that my talk here, well, the diuretics are a popular heterogeneous class of antihypertensive with several decades of clinical application. We know that ACE inhibitors and diuretics, if you are using combination with NSAIDs and COX-2 inhibitors, that decrease the efficacy. And dietary factors are also very important. Excess salt ingestion blocks the antihypertensive effect of diuretics, perhaps by countering volume depletion and reduction in cardiac output. An acute phase, which may be required for the longer term chronic vasodilatory phase associated with diuretic administration. So in large-scale clinical studies, the ability to reduce cardiovascular events is well documented with the chlorthalidone, with also indapamide, and also with the combination of the amiloride and hydrochlorothiazide and trimethoprim and hydrochlorothiazide. And in the context of congestive heart failure and in-stage renal disease, this has been also been shown by spironolactone. So selection of the appropriate medication and dose optimization of diuretics in a variety of circumstances must be taken care of, like salt-sensitive hypertension, which is prevalent in obese patients, elderly patients, and black patients. And in 2021, the data clearly shows that we must have some input on distinction between thiazide and thiazide-like diuretic. Well, I told you that the indapamide and chlorthalidone are sufficiently structurally and mechanistically distinct from the hydrochlorothiazide to warrant a separate classification. And if there is setting of a low renin hypertension, diuretics elevate renin in a dose-dependent manner and therefore would be expected to enhance the efficacy of angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors and aldosterone receptor blockers. So if you take the cases of resistant hypertension, diuretics are critical, which affects, and this condition affects something around 5% of adults. Potassium sparing diuretics, these are probably underutilized. In India, the number of salt-sensitive patients like obese elderly is increasing. And the SPRINT trial has supports a systolic blood pressure target of less than 120 in many patients. Thus, it is likely that diuretics will become even more prominent in management of hypertension in our country. And numerous clinical trials in hypertension have shown the benefit of thiazide or thiazide-like diuretics in preventing cardiovascular disease outcome, including a stroke, heart failure, myocardial infarction, left ventricular hypertrophy, and aortic aneurysm compared to placebo controls. Importantly, several common hypertension-related comorbidities, including aging, obesity, diabetes, and renal function, are important, are associated with salt sensitivity, and I told you that in such condition, you should prefer diuretics. Insufficient diuretic treatment is one of the most frequent reasons for failure to achieve blood pressure targets. And the increasing use of lower dosage of diuretics in combination with ACE inhibitors or ARBs further supports diuretic use, as adverse effects of diuretics are reduced by both dose reduction and by the effects of accompanying ACE inhibitors, ARBs, which counteract the potential adverse effects of diuretics or circulating potassium, calcium, glucose, lipids, and uric acid levels. So this is my last slide here. And this is a wisdom word from the Dr. Norman M. Kaplan, a tale of tortoise and the hare. he says this very important point, which he has told that chlorthalidone is the best diuretic for the treatment of hypertension, both in blood pressure lowering efficacy and most importantly, in prevention of hypertension-related morbidity and mortality. Despite this fact, hydrochlorothiazide has been and continues to be by far the most frequently prescribed diuretic in the USA. Even among patients with resistant hypertension, where a more potent diuretic is especially needed, chlorthalidone is chosen in only 3% of patients. And there are numerous possible reasons for this flagrant failure of evidence-based medicine. I will refer to the tale of the tortoise and the hare as my way of explaining the paradox in this reference. We physicians are the tortoise, where this pharmaceutical company is the hare. Here, unlike in the original, the hare easily wins the race. But hopefully, we tortoise will overtake the hare. But meanwhile, millions of hypertensive patients have been given a less effective drug and almost certainly did not protect them as well as chlorthalidone would have. The patients are neither tortoise nor hares, but they have been the unwitting recipients of a flagrant failure of evidence-based medicine. And I think he has given some points to ponder, and we also must think about this tale. Thank you very much. Thank you for patience hearing. Thank you.